Good evening, everyone. This is Lance Wood with the National Weather Service Houston Galveston office, and I'll be giving you the now upgraded Hurricane Nicholas briefing. Well, what has changed? Well, the title's changed. We now have a hurricane, and so there's kind of a small hurricane warning area from Port O'Connor to Freeport, and there's been a slight track adjustment to the east or to the right, and the forecast amounts have been reduced, albeit only really slightly. And we'll talk about all of these. So I'm going to start off with some recent observations. We do have tropical storm winds occurring along the coast. There's some sustained winds at 55 to 70 miles per hour near Matagorda Island and in the bay this evening. And Freeport, even an hour or two ago, was receiving winds of 40 to 50 miles per hour sustained. So we have some very strong winds occurring along the coast. And then if you kind of look in the bottom right, there's a box there from that little inset from my graphic there, Matagorda Bay, and you can actually see the one observation that came out of sort of the eastern part of the bay there, where they recorded 74 miles per hour, which is the cutoff for a hurricane. And the wind gust was a little over 90 miles per hour at that spot. And that spot is actually right here. So kind of the eastern portion there of Matagorda Bay. It was right when kind of the northern eye wall, it really only has a northern eye wall. It doesn't have any convection to the southwest because of dry air it's been entraining into it. And that caused the upgrade here to a hurricane, but it's literally happening as it's coming on the Matagorda coast, probably the eastern portions there of Matagorda here soon. So one other interesting thing is the tropical storm force winds haven't reached very far inland, and there's really not, the convection isn't reaching very far inland either. However, we have seen quite a bit of rain right along the immediate coast, and we have a couple of flash flood warnings out for generally 4 to 8 inches that have happened kind of since the kind of late morning, afternoon, and into the evening hours. So this is the precipitation estimates from our radar. Again, was 4 to 8 down in Matagorda and Brazoria along the coast. Probably getting closer to that now in Galveston. There's even southern parts of Galveston County, there's a flash flood warning as well. I know there's been some road closed as well. So the current satellite radar view, this radar view is actually a little bit old. I had to grab this about an hour ago, but yeah, right here where you see this kind of more intense oranges and reds, that's kind of the northern portion of the circulation. Again, it's kind of broad, and I've just looked at a current reflectivity image, and it looks like it's become a little more circular here, and that's kind of the center, or just north of the center. And like I said, it's basically getting very, very close to the Matagorda coastline. So we have had some increasing, again, moderate to heavy rainfall near the coast and offshore this evening, and again, we've had some flash flood warnings in those coastal areas. And if you take a look at the infrared satellite imagery, you can see some very cold cloud tops. So this is very deep convection here right along the coast, and that's why we're seeing some of these flash flood warnings and some higher rainfall rates. But again, it's pretty much limited to the coastal counties, maybe just far southeast Harris, hardly seeing any precipitation as you get northwest of this area that's getting a lot of rainfall. So it's very much you're either getting rainfall or kind of moderate to heavy rainfall, or you're not right now. So this is the latest track forecast that was just updated from the National Hurricane Center. You'll notice a couple of things here, that the tropical storm force wind field in orange does cover the coastal counties now, into kind of probably now just entering Galveston Bay. You see the tropical storm warnings there north of Freeport, the hurricane warning that we just told you about where the center is. And again, it will move northeast tonight and into Tuesday, then start to slow down kind of late Tuesday into Wednesday. Fortunately, that will be, we think, as Nicholas is beginning to leave our area and going over more into closer into the state line. So we're a little bit more concerned now for heavy rain just east of our area into more Lake Charles area. So we'll be monitoring that sort of in the midweek period. So yeah, the arrival time of tropical storm force winds don't mean a whole lot to most of you along the coast because they're there, but they will gradually creep further inland into the inland portions of the coastal counties. And again, probably throughout most of our tropical storm warning area now, since we've seen some intensification, we will see at least some weaker tropical storm force winds and some of the inland areas that are in the tropical storm warning later tonight and into Tuesday morning as Nicholas kind of moves northeast across the area. And again, you see now pretty high probabilities, point probabilities there across all of the coastal locations, as we are seeing the tropical storm force winds and some fairly strong tropical storm force winds as well. Go ahead and move on from that slide. So this has also been an increase in the probability of seeing those 50-knot winds. Those are sort of your damaging type winds. And I kind of like to use this for where you're going to see power outage. You start seeing some high probabilities of these type of winds. And we are, of course, right where we're going to see the landfall, and just to the right there in eastern Matagorda, maybe right there in the western part of Brazoria County there, we're seeing some very high probabilities of these kind of winds, basically approaching 60 mile per hour sustained. And even now, if you look over towards Galveston Island, the probability for Galveston is kind of in that 40 to 50% range for sustained, close to 60 mile per hour winds. So we're starting to think now a little bit more of a threat here along the immediate coast of some scattered power outages, and maybe even just inland as well. But some of these wind gusts, could be around 70 miles per hour in the stronger convection. And right along the coast there, where the center comes in, again, we may see some gusts in the 70 to 80 mile per hour range here in the next 2 to 3 hours. So the storm surge watch and warning, in a warning still, obviously. The only change here has been to bump the Galveston Bay area and the areas north of Freeport just a little bit to 3 to 5 feet instead of 2 to 4 feet. So again, that's still storm surge warning. Hasn't changed at all. Probably be up at least through Tuesday morning as we're hitting a high tide cycle. And we're going to talk more about that here as we're hitting some of our highest levels soon. So took a look at Sargent here. We had observations up until 7 when I captured this image, and we do think, with the center coming in not too far from there, I think it's a really good bet. We're going to see the 3 to 4 foot storm surge here. It's probably occurring as we speak, and those values are going to peak, 2.5 to 3.5 feet above mean lower low water. For all these graphics, I would use the highest range. Since we now have a hurricane, I would use the top of this gray area for tonight. So again, for Sargent, that would put it 3 feet above mean lower low water. And this orange line, which is actually your storm surge, you can bump that up a little bit because it's using that black line. So the storm surge is going to reach, I think, over 3 feet there in Sargent. If you look at Freeport, same kind of thing. I would use the upper edge here, so 5 to 5.5 feet above mean lower low water. So if you look at some of these impacts, portions of FM 523 between Highway 332 and FM 2004 begin to flood. So we're definitely expecting that kind of impact there along the Brazoria coast at Freeport. And the worst of it we should be getting close. The high tide is, so this I've kind of shown you between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. So it's just probably before midnight. So real close to getting that peak. Now, it could be that peak's extended a little bit further because it could flatten out just a little bit on that peak from what you see here because the storm is still kind of approaching that area. So it'll be pretty high water levels here even into the early morning hours before we start to see it probably come down quite a bit towards 7 a.m. Galveston Bay interest, you see that high tide displaced till after midnight. And again, use the top here. I think now we may be seeing some levels reaching 5 feet above mean lower low water. At least 4.5 feet is my expectation at this point. So you can see these impacts of Highway 187 becoming impassable, and it's probably going to affect, I already talked to Garrett about this, but probably going to affect the ferry service here as well here a little bit later on here tonight. Pier 21 on the backside, we know we're already seeing a little bit of flooding back there, and their high tide is also very similar in timing to what we're seeing there along the beachfront. So again, I would go above 4 feet there, 4.5 to 5 feet on the peak there. So again, we're seeing some significant storm surge. So definitely in the warning criteria with this moderate coastal flooding. So total additional rainfall. So I've taken out, what was forecast during the day. I've also shortened the period a little bit. This only goes out through Tuesday night, so it's not for the whole track of Nicholas, but it's the portion of the track that we care about over here. So 6 to 8 inches along the coast. Some of this in Matagorda has already fallen. So kind of focus Brazoria here, Fort Bend onwards. Just some of this on the backside has probably already occurred. But notice the tight gradient still. I mean, as you get inland, really a tight gradient across Harris County, for example. I mean, you can get, maybe 6, 7 inches here tonight on the very southeast part of Harris County. And then as you get in the northwest part, it could be very little rainfall, 1 or 2 inches. So it's going to be quite a gradient, so that hasn't changed. But we do think conditions will improve here as we get into Tuesday afternoon, and a lot of that precipitation moves on out. The day one outlook was changed here. That's what's rest of it here is basically tonight. The high risk is kind of, again, the coastal counties. The moderate risk and the slight risk were pushed way closer to the coast. So this is, again, a really tight gradient of flood risk, and it follows kind of what's actually going on with the radar right now, where most of the risk is in the coastal counties, maybe, like I said, the very southern part of some of our first tier inland, and then it really tapers off. Again, the main flash flood risk here is probably through, this is through 7 a.m. It probably extends a little bit more into Tuesday morning. If you take a look at Tuesday, and this actually goes Tuesday and Tuesday night, there'll still be a slight risk of some flooding, I think, tomorrow as Nicholas begins to sort of pull away, but mainly in our far eastern areas. So most of the more significant flooding will shift east of far east Texas and into Louisiana, especially as we move into the afternoon tomorrow. Could definitely see some tornadoes, although it's probably, again, I would say it's not really from Matagorda. This would be from maybe Brazoria now over to Jefferson County, so across Galveston Bay. It would probably be just for tonight. And that's the way this is shaping up. So it looks kind of like an isolated threat, not a big threat on tornadoes. So this is a nice summary slide for you. I'm not going to go over all of this, but again, going to probably see more power outages than we've been briefing, especially for coastal areas due to the wind increase. It wasn't a big increase. It was only 5 miles an hour to take it to a hurricane, but we've seen some intense convection right along the coast, and that's helping mix down, like I said, some strong tropical storm force winds across a lot of the coastal areas. So I think these scattered power outages are going to happen. And we already talked about the 3 to 5 feet of storm surge tonight, the moderate to high risk of flash flooding, and the marine areas kind of go without saying. That's a dangerous situation out there tonight. So some takeaways: stormy period on tap for the next 18 hours. We've got all these threats: flash flooding, high winds, storm surge, a few tornadoes, improving conditions Tuesday afternoon, and then the river flooding, kind of listed out the what we're concerned about there: the San Bernard, Southeast Harris bayous, Clear Creek, Armand Bayou, Cedar Bayou, the East Fork of San Jacinto, and some of the coastal bayous there: Dickinson, Chocolate Bayou, Bastrop Bayou, Hitchcock. Forecast confidence is, hey, finally kind of confident, right? It's making landfall. There's still some uncertainty at the end of the track, but that's most likely going to be outside of our area. And it's an atypical hurricane. It's entrained some dry air, so you don't see any convection on the south side. So it's got still some odd organization, but nonetheless, I'm pretty confident in what we've gone over here tonight.